Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. Thank you everyone for coming today. This is a Q&A with director Cristina Groșan for the movie Things Worth Weeping For, which we watched in Seattle last night at Northwest Film Forum. This is the 9th edition of the Romanian Film Festival of Seattle, and we're very happy to have this discussion. We're here with we're going to have moderator Letizia Goran, she's a professor at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And we're very happy to have the sponsorship and the support of the Center for European Studies from the university. And I hope you will also join us tomorrow. We're going to be playing The Island at Northwest Film Forum, and we're also going to have the following day a Q&A with director Anca Damian. So I'll leave the link for that in the chat. And I will pass baton on to Ileana Marin, who will say a few words about our moderator today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabi. So it's truly a pleasure to introduce Letizia, with whom we were colleagues for 4 or 5 years. Letizia, at the University of Bucharest.
Long time ago, yes.
Yeah, some time ago. But I'd like to say that Letizia is a comparatist interested in global and transatlantic studies with a focus on African American and Eastern European literatures, Cold War and post-Cold War studies. And her perspective is transnational. So here she is today with us, moderating this conversation with Cristina Groșan. I'd also like to emphasize the fact that Letizia has published monographs about the aesthetic dimension of Romanian-American critical thought and about the African-American post-Sol generation of writers. Also, she has put together panels in international conferences dedicated to Romanian film and Romanian literature. Just this year, we co-moderated a panel at the conference in Timișoara, which drew the attention of Romanian film critics as well. So over the year, I would say Letizia lectures and publishes on Romanian art, literature, and film. And she also teaches Romanian at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. But I won't take much longer, because Letizia is truly a wonderful moderator. And here you are, Letizia.
Thank you so much for this very generous presentation. In fact, it should have been much shorter, since I am not the object of this Q&A. We are here today to talk with Cristina Groșan about her first feature film, Things Worth Weeping For, which premiered in 2021 at Sarajevo Film Festival. Since then, she finished another movie, and I very much look forward to seeing that one. That one is called Ordinary Failures, and that one premiered at the Biennale, at the Venice Biennale, where it also got an award for the best movie for authors under 40. So we're here with an accomplished director. She's very young, I dare say, but she's done quite a lot. She also has 6 short movies that she made and they are in Hungarian, some in Hungarian, some in Romanian, because she's from Arad, and she's worked in both cultures. She got her BA in 2010 from Romania, and then her MA in Hungary in 2012. So she's and her movies, her feature movies have been transnational, I would say, collaborations or international collaborations with Czech, Hungarian, and I guess some Romanians as well. Maybe, no, I don't know. I think she's coming with a very powerful message and some very interesting questions about identity and about how do we and about agency, about identity and agency, especially women's agency. So that's a general introduction. And let me start. My first question is about actually it kind of tries to put together my impressions of the movie and also, what I read in some materials that you can also look at on her website, groșan.ro. So in an interview which I read there, which was promoting your next film, Ordinary Failures, you say that what you strive for with that movie is to, quote, find our lost ways with each other in the context of a broken world in which our personal problems are just predicaments or bigger disturbances that should concern us all. So has your perspective on the world changed a lot since you made things worth weeping for? And if so, is this change a response to, the crisis that we've been, experiencing in the past years, the COVID, the war in Ukraine? We're not living, indeed, as you say, in a peaceful world anymore. Everything has been appended, and we like to think that we're doing things as normal as we can, but the new normal is a bit disturbing.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for having me, and thank you for this very nice introduction. I'm sorry I can't meet you live yet, but I hope sooner than later I will get to meet you in real life. Well, I made Things Worth Weeping For with Nóra Rainer-Micsinyei, we wrote it together and she starred. I met her when I directed her as an actress in some of my short films. And so we dealt very much in this film with the topic of reaching a certain age and feeling like you're not where you're supposed to be, where outside pressure is communicating that you should have achieved by this point. So it's clearly looking inwards. Whereas my next film deals with exactly the opposite. I have 3 very different stories, but they're all very small personal stories put in the backdrop of something much bigger happening. And I can't say that my view of the world has changed since I've made this film. But it was necessary for both me and Nóra to actually say this story and see how the outside world reacts to it, because we felt that we were both reaching 30 at that point, and we were thinking that the generation of our parents at our age, at the age of 30, had a very different life set up for themselves than we do. They had at least a child, they had a fixed job, they had a car, a mortgage, or already owning an apartment, very clear steps in life, whereas my generation has a very difficult time to decide what they do next weekend, so it's a very different way of existing at age 30. And so we found a lot of we were dealing with a lot of pressure, but a lot of absurd and funny situations that were all coming from this source. So we needed to do this introspection, but at the same time we were aware that the only way we can tell such a story, or I can tell such a story as a director, is by using self-irony, because of course our problems are the biggest to our own selves, but actually we're just a grain of salt in a much, much bigger perspective. And this is what I'm dealing in my second film. So it's a little bit of stereo. It's inside and outside. These 2 films, they're opposites, but they belong to the same train of thoughts, I think.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you, since in both movies you are also not only the director but also the scriptwriter. I was gonna ask you, how does that formula work for you? And in the first film, and I guess in the second one, you also collaborated when you wrote the script with the actress. And so, I mean, why this formula? Why do you feel the need to work with somebody else? I mean, what does that do? What does that bring you?
Well, just to be precise, on Ordinary Failures, I'm not quoted as co-writer. The writer is Klára Vlasákova, but we did collaborate on the story and we molded it together for 3 years. And the the script of Things Worth Weeping For, I did co-write together with Nóra Rainer-Micsinyei. I don't co-direct. I think these are very different jobs. Obviously, they're different jobs, but they when put into action, they work very differently. And I really, really enjoy collaboration on a script. I feel that this dialogue that happens between two people who want to say the same thing, but obviously they have two different ways of telling the same story. So this ping pong ensues, and perhaps sometimes we're coming up with bad ideas, even not just good ideas, but we're always going forward, and I love that so much. So I want to keep working like this, as long as I find people and collaborators who want to say the same stories and are motivated by the same things.
I was very, I don't know, pleased, let's say, to encounter Maya and Sarah in your film, because they did remind me of Eastern European characters, Eastern European women who have this sort of quirky sense of humor, almost dark sense of humor. There are a lot of kind of surrealist details. And forgive me if I ask this. I mean, maybe this sounds totally silly, but what's with the dog, with the rainbow colored dog? I thought, like, where did that come from? I mean, okay, taking a bath with a dead person in the house, that's strange enough. Finding your mother's glasses in the fridge, that's weird. Looking under the cupboard and finding some socks, all right, I can see that. But the dog, where does the dog come in? Where does the dog come from? So anyway, I noticed these things, and it just, the movie was, of course, the atmosphere was serious and grave. And every now and then you would have this eruption of the absurd, which, made me think of the, I don't know, absurdity of existence, and then that kind of absurd that sort of defines kind of a Central European, Eastern European sensibility. Have you thought about any of this? And yeah, where does the dog come from?
Well, fortunately, I've been meeting audiences with this film quite a lot in the past 1.5 years since we premiered with it. And so I can fairly say that there are two types of audiences: the audience that likes the dog and the audience who doesn't like the dog and is somehow put off and has a lot of questions, but also the audience who likes Bence and then the audience who likes Marci. There's this 4 types, actually, not just 2. But on a serious note, we enjoyed very much, and we felt on a visual note that we really have, that the film and the storytelling has so much potential to be punctuated by all these funny or touching or absurd moments, and then this surreal moment as well. And it's not the first surreal moment in the film when this colorful dog in the night, fluorescent dog, appears. He's a wolf, actually. Much earlier, there's a flashback with Maya and Shara as children. So there are many different moments in which this kind of appearance is anticipated. But for me, this wolf may or may not be real, is clearly connected to Maya's imagination, and she as a character is in a point where she's ready to take a turn in her actions. I'm not going to name what happens at the end, because maybe some people might still watch it later and I don't want to spoil it. But we felt that this is a turning point for her. And sometimes in films, the turning points are illustrated by action. I wanted in this film to be illustrated in a different way. But then at the test screening, there were indeed people who had questions. Okay, it makes sense, but what is that dog? And so we had a lot of thoughts about whether we should keep this dog or not. Wolf, please, let's call it wolf. So whether we should keep the wolf or not. Yeah. Yes, he's a Czechoslovak wolf, actually. He's a film wolf, film animal. But then I felt that if I would be getting rid of this passage, I would actually just be catering and not distracting anybody, and catering to a certain kind of need. And I like the fact that it might be disruptive to some viewers. I like to annoy them a little bit. And I feel that it has something to do with the poetry of the film. So I decided to keep it and take the risk.
Yeah, it definitely, shocked me when it appeared right there. But as I said, in certain respects, it just fit with the rest of the movie, with those little, punctuating moments from the rest of the movie. There was another one that, I guess everybody else noticed it. It's the ending of the movie, where which reminded me of Antonioni's blow up, the ending of Antonioni's blow up. It was, to me, that was a suggestion that maybe Maya, who is a creative individual and who's trying to make sense of what's going on with her and what's happening with her, and she doesn't want to fall into all that prescripted life. You get an apartment, you get a mortgage, you get a boyfriend, you marry, and all that. I can see her, throughout the movie trying to escape all these things, though she's very confused. She's a misfit, she's an underdog, if we want to go back to the dog. But the ending, the fact that she evades, she escapes into that, football field, and she enmeshes herself into that, inflatable ball or whatever it is, inflatable thing, which is also transparent. That to me visually just symbolized this, escape. So it's, I don't know, I like the ending very much. So my question is, do you like Maya? Did you do that for her at the end? Did you offer her a way out of, the world that she's been groping in throughout the movie? Was it because you like her, or?
That's a very nice question, actually. Nobody has asked me if I like her. I really like her, but I think that she earned herself her ending. I just put her in some difficult situations, and then I'm very convinced that this works in screenwriting when you have the necessary conflict. You just need to put the character in the right spot, and then you just sit back and watch them get out of it because they'll want to get out of it. So basically, I think this is what we needed to do, is put Maya in a situation, press her enough for her to realize that what she's in and the future she has in front is not necessarily the future she would like for herself, and then let her find a way out. But we did this with all the love and support, I hope. And I'm very, how to say without it sounding strange, but I'm an avid cinephile, and I like to watch films generally, and I like to watch this film when I get the chance. It makes me happy in some strange way.
I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to let other people, they can, of course, jump in even now. But so my other question was this. When you graduated in 2010, that was around the time when, the new Romanian wave was really making waves. Has there been any sort of... have you been impacted in any way by the new Romanian cinema? I was thinking that just because of the circumstance with the aunt's death, that reminded me of Cristi Puiu's Sierra Nevada, which has a completely different take on death and what happens and the kind of reactions it elicits. But I couldn't escape that reference. But so recently you worked, after you graduated in, as I said, all these transnational contexts. Would you think that your movies are, as I said, related in any way to the new Romanian wave or cinema, or are they more of a, part of a transnational global cinema?
Well, while growing up and then being in university, basically all we would watch would be Romanian New Wave and then everything else. So of course, I think the Romanian new wave of making films, both in visual storytelling and script-wise, that was the place to start your work. Actually, I remember in the first 2 years of school, we were not allowed to use music in our films, which I think was a really good exercise. But then it took me several years after school to start to teach myself again how to use music and not be afraid of it. So, you know, there's the other side of it. But honestly, I think maybe I'm not the right person to ask about this comparison, because I cannot see my films that well from the outside. Perhaps someone who's more objective can say. If I would be trying to answer in a more objective way, I hope that I took from the Romanian New Wave the way they direct actors. I like to rehearse with my actors a lot, but never the scripts that we're actually shooting. I like to build up the scenes and the past and everything that led to the moment we are shooting in the film. So when we perhaps improvise something, we all important characters and actors, that we all have the same set of information. So we do some improvisation, we start with a very solid common ground. So perhaps that, but I realized that I may be like a rebellious teenager who was raised by, or in the context of Romanian New Wave, who is rebelling completely against their parents, let's say, because my films are very different if you take them as a whole compared to the Romanian New Wave. Although Sierra Nevada is one of my favorite films, I enjoy that film so much. And I enjoy so much the dark humor that it has. But my films are trying to be an escape from our reality, the reality that you see when you go outside the street, or your everyday life. Both films that I've done now managed to be 84 minutes long. This is how it happened. So they're not very long. And this is why I feel that since I only have 84 minutes, I really want to grab the viewer and make them mine for the time that I have them. You know, I want them to forget what they came in with. So I try to engulf them in a story, both in information and sound and music and performances, to keep them there. If this answers your question, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I was just curious because, this is the Romanian Film Festival, and we've been talking a lot about the new Romanian cinema. So, yeah, of course, I was wondering, where do you situate yourself? Where do you see yourself? And I imagine that you must have seen many of these movies, and yeah.
Of course. I mean, yes, this is what I grew up on. It's the Bible.
It's very interesting that you rebelled against them. I mean, already we have rebellions against the Romanian New Wave.
Yes, but not because I wouldn't appreciate it, but because I want to leave my own mark. And it's only now that I realize that this is the artistical response. I mean, I'm 35 now. I graduated 12 years ago, so it's my reflection now responds to what I have been doing artistically in the past 12 years. So only now I've been able to start to analyze a little bit what this may mean. And at this point, I think it's some sort of rebellion against a certain current that I wanted to leave a mark on. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know how to touch on this because it sounds very, scripted. But your main characters in all these movies are women. And of course, you are a woman. We are all women here. Look at this. So I guess that also leaves a mark on the movie. Do you feel that you talk, that you write, that you direct differently? Do you attempt to do it as a poetic? Do you have a feminist poetic? That's kind of what I want to ask. Do you feel that there's something militant in terms of, a feminine sensibility behind your movies, or not so much? It's just you know, part of who you are as an artist?
Well, this is a very complex question, and I've been speaking a lot about it with Klára Vlasákova, the writer of Ordinary Failures, because we kept thinking whether our film is a female film or not. And with Things Worth Weeping For in cinemas, both in Romanian and in Hungarian cinemas, because it was fortunately distributed in both countries, I've been asked a lot about the film. And while I was asked about the film, I got the tag of female film. And I rebel against this quite a lot, because I would just like it to be a film and not a female film, because I feel in some way it's reduced to some kind of side section of something. When we are going to start calling certain films male films, then I can have the female film tag. But of course, it's a feminist act if you think about the fact that I'm doing a film. It's not for females. I hope it's universal and men can also identify with it. But at the same time, I feel that my gender is not, I cannot ignore it. And I really hope that young girls interested in films and doing films nowadays will look around and see, well, there's this film and then there's that film, and they will see more and more films directed or with female directors of photography, screenwriters, grips, I don't know. They will see a variety of jobs that perhaps didn't seem obviously available to them before. I didn't have so many role models to look up to while I was growing up in Arad. And I grew up in a family that was very far from any artistic career. So to them, it felt like a hobby, and they were kindly and patiently looking forward to the moment where I will finally get a real job and deal with some more graspable topics, and not having so much artistic ambitions, because they were also afraid for me. It's hard to make a living as a film director. To this day, my father has difficulty defining what it is I do, but now he has started to join me for film festivals, which he enjoys very much. He's an engineer, so to him this world is it's very strange.
Yeah, I didn't mean when I asked you, my question was not that was a female movie, a female made movie. Yeah, that's just a terrible concept. But what I meant was more of a feminist take on the movie. Also because, most of the characters are women, and as you said, the director, the screenwriter, and all that. So my sense was that these characters were trying to find, Maya was trying to find her agency. And in that sense, I saw it as maybe, a feminist movie. But I didn't want to impose that kind of interpretation on it. That's why I asked you this question.
Oh, but I didn't mean to say you did. Everybody else did here in Europe. This is something I was asked in almost every interview. So this is why I addressed it, because I feel that it came up so often that I cannot pass by any sort of question without addressing it, that it's a universal film. But of course it does work also as a feminist film with female characters trying to find their own path on their own terms, going against a certain current and against expectations. And also I was interested in female friendship, with all the good and all the competition and all the jealousy that might be in there, and showing two characters who grew up together, but they are at the point where they hadn't met in so long, and their lives have taken very different paths, and everyone is a little bit jealous on the other. So yes, it does have this layer. But I was particularly happy after screenings when I saw men come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm Maya." Because for the women, and this is what I've noticed a lot, that women obviously women are very used to identifying with both male and female protagonists, whereas men, at least in Europe, Central Eastern Europe for sure, have it more difficult to identify with female characters, female leads. And Klára, my screenwriter, gave me an interesting example that recently she tried to watch Mulan with her nephew, who's like 7, and he protested. He wanted to watch some action film. Eventually they did watch Mulan and he enjoyed it, but it took some convincing. So this was just a food for thought for me. Any complaints? This is something I would like to ask usually the audience if besides
I did not feel like identifying with the mother.
Okay.
That's for sure.
I liked the mother so much.
You do?
Yes, because she's such a quirky, strange character, and the mother is a very big star in Hungary, and I had no idea that she's so well known when I proposed this role to her, and it was very touching to see. She's a very experienced actress, so we did rehearse with her, and so I was very surprised to see how supportive she was with us during the process, and not just supportive of me as a director or of Nóra as an actress, but of the team work together, because she has shot a lot, so she knows possible difficulties and so on and so forth. But I have a lot of empathy for the character, because she's someone who's 60 or in her early 60s, and she feels like society is communicating to her that, thank you, you've done enough, you can go retire now. And to me, this is and this topic I'm dealing with in the next film as well. We have a woman who's recently lost her husband, and she faces this laying off. And I feel for this generation very much, because I see around me a lot of people who are in their 60s and who have so much energy and so much to give. And not often I see that their efforts are not, so I often see that their efforts are not always welcome. But I hope that this is changing.
Yeah, but I thought that, her interaction with her daughter, I mean, she's a loving mother, I think. At the same time, I think she kind of establishes these borders when, like, she doesn't let her daughter sleep in her house because she has some workers coming over in the morning, and she says, oh, and now, you go and, figure it out yourself. You'll find a place to sleep. I mean, your boyfriend found the place to sleep. Why can't you? There was so much, I guess, it was a very raw dialogue there. I thought, like, oh my God, that gave me pause. I was like, really? That's how mothers are supposed to talk to their daughters? I'm not used to that kind of interaction. I'm more so there were these true moments in the movie. That's what I liked about it. As I said, those quirky moments, the wolf, this kind of dialogue that wakes you up. I mean, Maya is kind of groping there. She's trying to figure out, okay, so what am I gonna do next? And I'm with a dead person in the house, and maybe her hand moved, and these coroner guys aren't coming, and then she forgot to tell them that they don't need to cremate the woman, that they need to bury her, and she picks up the child, and the child cries. And I mean, there's a lot of as I said, raw, I would say, things, events happening there on the screen. They don't seem to be to me as a spectator, they felt as if they were kind of thrown at us, and it was, some of that was shocking. And so it was like an awakening. And so I don't know, Maya's awakening coincided with our awakening as spectators. But that's why I said that my sense was that there was a lot more to this movie than just what, met the eye the first time. And that's why I felt the need to watch it again, because, a lot of those things, I needed to kind of put them in order and to set them in some space. But I'm taking too much space, and so I'm gonna invite everybody else to join us. I'm sure everybody else has questions and comments. My questions tend to be short and my comments tend to be long. Sorry.
But it's a wonderful job, and we got so much out of the conversation with Cristina. I have a very short question, and because you mentioned, Cristina, that you wanted to provide a sort of escape from reality, I would say that that's an invitation to reflect on reality. That was how your movie functioned to me, actually, had that kind of impact. But my question is, how did you come up with the title?
Well, the title is a translation, and it's not a direct translation. In Hungarian, it's a legjobb dolgokon bőgni kell, which would be the best things are worth weeping for. So it's not 100% the same, but it stems from an improvisation we did with the actor playing Marci, the locksmith Marci, because he was one of the most authentic and most relaxed characters in the film, and he was basically telling the girls, yeah, it's like that when the lady's hand moves and they panic, and then originally they would start laughing at it, and then they would be very embarrassed that they laughed at that person, which was very inappropriate. And he was trying to calm them down and tell them that in life, the best things, they're in opposition like this. The bad things are worth laughing about, and the good things are worth weeping about. It was this opposition. That was the title's very long journey. But we made an adaptation. It's such a language specific thing for Hungarian that it was very difficult to have the same translation in English and in Romanian. So English and Romanian are sort of the same. Lucruri pentru care merită să plângi. But I often get the question, what are the things worth weeping for? But I'm reluctant to answer because I'm so much looking forward to what people think the things are worth weeping for.
Thank you.
I have a question. From the beginning of the movie, we can see Maya's kind of like childlike wonder as she goes through life, and she has a different perspective of looking at things. So we can see that very early on, but I think especially in the second half of the movie, there are a few times when she's alone in the house, with a dead body. And so there are a few scenes where, there's that play of the depth of focus changes from like one plane to another. And so, I guess it's a reflection of her, she's addressing, or she's thinking about, life and death, and maybe like her purpose in life, and, what the future holds for her. Was this something that you considered originally to maybe address it with dialogue and then decided to have it without dialogue? Because I mean, there are a lot of subtleties or, reflections about life that I feel like they, you might miss them, but they really happen, just in the visual way, as opposed to, a dialogue maybe between her and her friend. So I was just wondering if this was something that, they originally, maybe you thought about having her, talking about out loud, and then just decided to have her addressing these questions just in a visual way.
You mean whether we had these scenes shot and then we edit them out?
No, no, I was just wondering if, maybe you originally thought that, I guess like how much of a conscious choice was to have these like little moments be, a reflection of her, thinking about her purpose in life and, what the future holds for her. But it's just like in these like little kind of vignettes, as opposed to having a conversation with her friend or with her family about this.
Yeah, that's a fair question. And it was long time of molding the text, because Nóra comes from theater background, and the main tool of theater is dialogue, in my view. So we had a lot of discussions about the dialogue and removing and adding and removing. And I feel that filmmaking is much stronger when you show and don't tell. And already the film was so much dialogue heavy. I mean, compared to how I usually work, or compared to my previous films, there's a bit more dialogue in this one. But the dialogue that's used here is usually to cover up something. So usually the characters are saying something, but actually they mean something else. And that's what I found fun to play with. And I feel the real changes happen to Maya when she's alone and she doesn't have someone to talk to, so she can ignore the problems or her inner conflicts. And of course, the big challenge, one of the big challenge happen to her when, of course, she's alone and she finally gets the courage to look at the dead woman. And to us, it was also an declared intention with this film to deal with death and not hide from it, because I feel there's so little dialogue on it, although it's an obvious fact of life, but it's so scary. And it was also a question of how we can show this in a decent way. So very early on, while doing the shot list with cinematographer Mark Győri, actually whose first film I ever saw from him was at TIFF, Transylvania Film Festival, The Ballad of Katalin Varga. So very early on, we started to discuss how this film should look like, and we went scene by scene, and this was one of the scenes which we saw very clearly from the beginning. We want to show the dead woman in a dreamy way, in a beautiful way, if possible, not scary, not a thriller horror kind of, or not in a, I don't know, something very close to science, but something otherworldly, but still having Maya facing the presence of a dead body, and so her own passing at some point. This is a very long answer to your question.
No, thank you. That was great. And yeah, I think it was shot very beautifully. So, I think that was a really nice choice. And I was just impressed about the little moments where, I feel like they speak a lot without Maya saying anything.
Yes, we enjoyed working on this. And there were some things we improvised on the spot, but many things do feel improvised, but actually they were written. And for example, when she first time is alone in the house because Sarah left with her friends, but she's going to come back in less than 5 minutes. But Maya puts on a dress of Mrs. Irma. And from there onwards, for the rest of the film, she's wearing Aunt Irma's dress. So to me, this was someone trying to meet someone else who's not there anymore. And it was also a challenge of how to create a portrait of Mrs. Irma without ever seeing Mrs. Irma's face, just through her objects. Thank you.
If nobody else, oh.
Yeah, I was thinking because last night after the movie, as I said, people didn't want to go without talking about the film. Someone who originally is from Baia Mare was asking, why did you choose a Hungarian cast? What kind of dialect they speak? And for me, it sounded like standard Hungarian. But him growing up in Baia Mare said, that's not the Hungarian that I am remembering. And I said, maybe because in Baia Mare they speak a dialectal version of Hungarian. But so his question was, why did you have the entire film with a Hungarian cast, a Hungarian story, which is universal and everybody enjoyed?
Well, yes, it's a fair question. I started to develop this story here in Budapest, and I did my BA studies in Cluj in Romania. But I'm originally from Arad, and Arad is much closer to Budapest than Bucharest, and somehow I ended up applying for an MA in Budapest, and I got accepted. And then I spent some years here, and suddenly I realized that I called Budapest home, and I became an adult here. I had my first job here, working at a short film company. I started doing films here. So it was somehow, I felt like I owe it to the place where I consider myself an adult to do my first feature in. So, and I started to develop this story together with Nóra, who doesn't speak Romanian. She's a Budapest-born girl. So we started to develop this here, and the Hungarian National Film Fund had a financing platform for debuts, and we got selected on the short list, and then we actually got funded a low budget debut scheme fund. And so once we got funded by them, it wasn't so much money, so it was really, really low budget, but at the same time, we were able to do something with it, and producer Giornate joined. So we were able to put it together here. If we don't get financing there in Budapest, for sure, I would turn to producers in Romania, because I enjoy very much shooting in Romania. And actually, after shooting Things Worth Weeping For, I got financing from the Romanian Film Fund for a short film, and I went to the Buzău, to the mountains above Buzău, to shoot a short film called Along Came a Prince, Trecea un prinț călare, because I miss shooting in Romanian so much. And yet I feel that coming from a mixed family, Romanian-Hungarian, I feel that my reality needs to include both. So I had at least one actor, László Mátrai, who's a Hungarian-Romanian actor. He was speaking Romanian, but with a very strong Hungarian accent, which to ears of people from Bucharest is very strange. But to answer your first question, this is standard Hungarian. This is standard Hungarian with some slang of youngsters from Budapest.
Well, thank you.
It's certainly not the Hungarian they speak in Romania, in Cluj or in Arad.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you a question about how do you secure exactly funds for, these movies that you're making? Apparently, you've been quite successful since you've been making these movies, so close one to the other. What about the distribution? I mean, these are pragmatic issues, but at the same time, they are very important. Without them, you wouldn't have a movie, really.
Definitely. Well, it might look like these two films I've done very close to each other, but actually, because of the pandemic, we delayed releasing Things Worth Weeping For a year and a half. And I started working on these two projects in parallel. So I was already in pre-production with Things Worth Weeping For when I was already collaborating on the story of Ordinary Failures with the Czech writer. So, but you never know if your projects are going to actually be made. This is a risk that always exists, and it's part of filmmakers' life. Fortunately, I was able to work with very determined producers, and in the case of Things Worth Weeping For, there was Giornate. Most of us in the crew, not everybody, but many of us were making their debut in films, but in feature film. But Judith already had quite some experience, which was very good because she knew the tricks, how to put together the team, how to think of the whole shooting schedule, and really max out the money we had, and also ask for a lot of favors, basically, so that we don't pay so much money for lenses, for the camera, for lights, for some of the grip equipment. But basically, it's not enough if you have a director with ideas. You need a producer who sees the potential in these ideas, knows what funding body would be interested in funding such an idea, and once this is funded, how do we make it? And once it's made, how do we get it to people? And in what form? Do we put it in cinemas? Is it the film for festivals? Should we try to release it directly online? These are all fair questions, and it differs from film to film. In the case of Things Worth Weeping For, as I mentioned already, we were lucky enough to have the film distributed in both Romania and Hungary. And it's been at festivals in many countries around the world and still is going after so much time.
Yeah,
so I'm very happy about that.
Well, I mean, Marie-Louise, Ottilia, somebody else, do you have any questions? Would you like to join in?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm sure Marie-Louise has a question for sure. I do have one. I noticed throughout the film there is a poetics of liminality, liminal spaces. Everything happens like in a space of transition. The parking lot, the apartment that is being done, the house whose owner is dead, the mother's apartment who's like totally in an unprecedented situation where she expects guests and her daughter is not welcome. The actress who runs away with the daughter crying in the car. So there's a lot of spaces, and then the end is so suggestive to that because she's padded and she rolls in this world, but she's padded, she's protected, and she lets go, because the whole movie I felt like it's about this time of liminal space where creativity comes in, where fundamental questions are answered. So did you have this in mind, or it just happened? It was just that you this kind of poetics unraveled in your subconscious, and then it just happened that all these spaces came together to tell the story of a transformation, actually.
Yeah, this is a very interesting reading of the situations. I didn't think of them like this, but I guess you are right. I think it was an intuitive reaction to putting the character in a permanent state of transition where she's never on solid ground until she fights and gets her own solid ground. She always depends on someone in some way. I think this is probably the reason, and it's always also very uncomfortable to be in such a situation. So I wanted the character to be obliged to take a step. It was basically pushing Maya to do something finally on her own.
I just loved the way, like, when her friend was gone, she went in and she let the water go. Or it's like these moments when somebody dear to you leaves and you just go in the room and you stay there for a while to kind of linger on that affection. So there were so many moments like that in the film that I was like, oh my God, this is amazing how it's so well constructed. But I was wondering if, it just came together because you're an artist and this is how creativity works. It doesn't follow a recipe, it just happens. That's what makes a great movie, and it is a great movie. So just wanted to end on this note that thank you for your movie. It was truly wonderful.
Thank you. It's nice to hear. There's a nice expression in Hungarian, hűlt, which is the empty cold space, and we use this word to with the editor while working to make sure that we show the viewer the place inhabited by Maya and Mrs. Irma, and then the cold empty space left behind, which is a normal part of life and transition.
I have a question too, and I also wanna say that I loved your movie at first sight. I really, really fell in love with the movie the first time I saw it, and
thank you.
One of the things that so many of the questions I wanted to ask, because great minds think alike, have been already asked. So the movie is about women in their 30s, right? And you've already mentioned stories about women and how much attention you pay to this. So I want to ask maybe two related questions. One is, who's your ideal viewer, or who are the viewers you're making films for? And then the other related question is, sure, as an artist, you would want your film to speak to viewers in many different ways, but what are some of the things that you would like to get from the viewers? Because you were talking about, you know, how I mean, in the questions and answers, you've touched on. I mean, Letizia talked about the awakening of the viewers in parallel with the awakening of the character and so on and so forth. So, who are you making movies for, and what do you want to get from the viewers?
Yes, these are simple questions, but actually so hard to answer. I thought we were making this film for people aged, I don't know, 25 to 35. And then I saw a lot of people that were touched and very enthusiastic, who were 40 plus and even 50. And it was usually people who didn't live their life in the very classical way of being married, having children, having this old-fashioned kind of living. And especially in Hungary and Romania, which are still, like, the majority of people feel that this is the right way to live your life, and then those who don't are a bit, there's less of them. So I think with this film they felt seen, and I was really happy. I didn't think that they could be our audience, but they are. And the same goes for LGBT community as well. They felt that they were seen, and I felt that the film became much larger thanks to them, and being open and then seeing themselves in this. And what I would like to get, well, basically, this might sound very general, but I would really like to be there at the screening and speak to the audience afterwards, because I get so much from seeing how the topic I deal with in a film be reflected in the minds of the viewer. And even if they ask questions or they tell me what they didn't understand or what they don't agree with, the way my idea is filtered through their consciousness, and it sparks a dialogue, is I feel such a strong connection with the audience, which makes me feel like this is the reason to make art and make films, this moment specifically. So it's not I don't know if it's a very specific answer that you were looking for, but to me, this is the interpretation people give to what they've just seen. Basically enlarges my view of the world, because of course I created something with one and I see it in a certain way, but when I meet new interpretations of things, it really opens up my mind. So, and I'm always so grateful for these interactions.
I wasn't expecting a particular answer. Thank you for talking through this. And one of the things that I really that really surprised me, and I guess it surprised you too, was that moment with the men who said he's Maya. So that's a really powerful testimony of the way in which the story speaks to many different people.
Yeah, well, as long as they are open, yes. But I've always I've heard about couples fighting about having watched this film, and one of them liked the film and the other one wasn't so convinced. And I was joking about the fact that this could be the perfect first date film. And you know, if the person likes the film, then they're a keeper. If they don't, then okay, I'm joking, of course, but they didn't stay together, you know, so but I always encourage people to not just address. I'm open not just to praise or any questions. I'm also open to complaints, as I like to call them, or things that they view differently.
What complaints did you receive?
About the wolf.
Oh, okay.
No, but it wasn't really a complaint.
I forgot to say I love the wolf. Thank you for the wolf.
Thank you. I like him too. It was difficult to work with the poor wolf. We were not allowed to touch him or pet him or anything, because then he stops obeying commands and he's just on the floor and playing. Yeah, but he's a film animal. And originally he was a fox, but the film fox in Budapest died of old age. And we found a fox in the Czech Republic, but it was 2,000 or 3,000 euro a day, which we couldn't really afford. So we were offered instead this 2-year-old Czechoslovak wolf called, what was his name? I forgot. Anyway, he was a young wolf in the beginning of his training. I think he's an actor. He must be a star by now.
Actually, that's exactly what would have been my question. If you could mention some challenges during shooting the movie, so we could see a little bit behind the scene. Yeah, thank you very much for the movie. It was so great, and I just really felt like being in an art movie, in an art theater, movie theater in Budapest or anywhere in like Central Eastern Europe. And I enjoyed so much understanding the background, like the social background and kind of like everything. Like it really felt good living in the US, you know, and culturally it's a little bit different. And then you just go into the movie theater and you feel like, oh, finally something that I understand exactly. Thank you.
Well, challenges, well, to be honest, the only challenge was that we had very limited money and so limited days of shooting, so we really had to measure to the last centimeter what's worth shooting and what not. But it was a very harmonious shooting, and I know this because my second film was much more difficult to make. But I think we were all very determined. We knew that we don't have much money. We knew that we want to make the best. So we wanted to prepare well. So once you're prepared well and the people are selected in a way by me, the producer and the production manager, in a way that we know that they're the kind of people who would like to do such a film. Some of them were very experienced, older film professionals who shot a lot of service productions. They also shot commercials, and for them to come to a film like this would be an easier job, but we would also benefit from the expertise. They were also touched that there's so many younger people who are so enthusiastic and they enjoy coming to work. So then the older ones started to enjoy coming to work, because sometimes on set it can be like in the army, things are on time, you need to do it, no questions asked, everyone does only their own task, doesn't interfere with anybody else's task. It was a challenge creatively to shoot in a confined space without the view, so making sure the viewer doesn't feel it's a confined space. We really wanted to create a maze in which you're lost in this sort of magical space, so that at the end of this film and at the end of Maya's night, you wouldn't be able to draw a map of this house. You don't know what is where. This is a 200 square meter villa on the Buda Hills next to Gellert, if you might know that region. But it looks smaller in the film. The other challenge was, of course, shooting with children, and Dalma is actually two. They're twin sisters. And we benefited from two very patient and open parents. The father would usually bring them to shoot. Of course, we had very limited time with them. We would shoot 12 hours. We would shoot with them much less. Of course, that's the rule. But of course, we have some challenging scenes in which one of the characters, Maya, opens the door. There's nobody. The camera pans down, and there's a crying child with tears streaming down her face. And so one would wonder how we achieved that. That was actually the first shooting day of this child. And we told the father what's supposed to happen. The girls were 2 years old, 2 and something, a few months. And so the father knew very clearly that if we need a scene where the child should be stressed, it should be Laura, because she's this presents, and Dalma is extremely laid back. So the father knew exactly what to tell Laura. Then he disappeared from the image, and she started crying immediately. It was like pressing a button. And on one hand, it's very interesting to work like this, but on the other hand, you know, we had such a harmonious, good, friendly shoot. We all got along. It was just a pleasure to come to set. Of course, it was long hours and difficult, but it was a good atmosphere. Yet on this day, when the kids came to set and we had to make them cry, everyone ended up fighting with everybody, because the tension that this situation brought, I felt so bad that I'm making a child cry by telling them certain things for the sake of art. You know, we were joking that we're hoping that the parents are putting money aside for a psychologist later on. But I hope they had fun in the scenes where they didn't have to cry. So partly this was the challenge, to shoot with children and also at night. But the casting director had a good idea of casting twins for such a role to be.
We lost Cristina. Maybe the connectivity.
I think so. Well, we were talking about challenges in filming, so these are the challenges of having.
Oh, okay, you are back, Cristina. We lost you. Oh no, again.
I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my internet, but I'm back. Is it working?
Good. Yes, continue your answer. We were wondering. We tried to.
I was lost. Where was I disconnected?
When you were talking about the challenges of you know, filming at night, and so you were going between.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is just where I wrapped up before I was disconnected. I'm sorry. I'm on a mobile phone connection, and sometimes the computer decides itself I've had enough. But basically, it was just preparing well for the shoot. There were no big issues. Compared to my second feature film, this was a walk in the park in terms of challenges. Preparation was really the key. If we wouldn't have prepared many months in advance, then we probably would have had a lot more difficulties. But fortunately, we were a compact shoot and crew. Fortunately, it was a good experience. To this day, they speak about it, how great the catering was. We had such a nice time. It was spring 2019.
Well, everyone. Oh, sorry. Another question?
No, I was just wondering, I was just gonna say that if there are no more questions, then and your connectivity is sort of falling through, I was wondering if we should wrap it up, and thank you for you know, humoring us and answering all our questions. And of course, most of all, thank you for the movie, for making the movie, and we look forward to seeing Ordinary Failings. When do you think that will be in cinemas, or will it be streaming, or?
Well, it's in Hungarian and Czech cinemas right now. It had its debut in September, so now it's just starting its festival circuit. And I think I don't know if this is if this is okay to say it, because the festival hasn't announced, but we're going to be in a festival in the US in Washington in December. But hopefully not the only one. So I hope we'll be starting our US tour soon. And we'll be going, actually, together with the producer, we'll be going to a festival in Canada in April. but sorry, but with this film we're going to be going to Canada. With Ordinary Failures, we don't know yet, except this festival in Washington. But the co-producer, and which is the producer of this film as well, Judith Stalder, she's half based in New York, so she has this extra drive to show American audiences the film she does, to get more information, more reactions, you know, to have people see her work there. So I think, and I'm also interested in joining her on this endeavor. So I hope we'll get it in, we'll get to more US audience to see the film.
And we would be happy to support you in any way we can with this endeavors. It was a little too late for us for Ordinary Failures for this year, so maybe next year, and we're your fans already.
Thank you, but it's a very different film. I kept speaking about this in Q&As of things worth weeping for. People were asking me, so what are you working on? And so I was saying, well, you know, if you've seen now a film, comedy drama, self-ironic film about the difficulties of being 30, well, now I'm doing something very sad. So it's not just sad, of course, but it's a different take on similar things. So looking forward to showing you the film, actually. I'm curious about your reaction after having seen the first film.
Yes, we hope to have you here in person, Cristina. It will be great. Who knows? Let's hope for the best.
Sooner or later, I'm sure.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. I think if we don't have any more questions, we can wrap it up. So thank you again for Cristina Groșan for coming, and for Letizia Goran from the Center for European Studies, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and for their support and sponsorship. And I will now let Marie-Louise say a few words. We're actually going to have another screening at their festival in Arizona for Things Worth Weeping For.
Yes, so this is and I guess if you're interested in audience reactions, I can have more for you after that. So we're screening the film next weekend as part of the second edition of the Romanian Film Festival in Arizona, that we organize in collaboration with Romanian Film Festival Seattle. So it's going to be next weekend on Sunday at 1:30, and I'll let you know how it goes. But I'm sure that people are going to love your movie.
Well, looking forward to any reactions, and thank you so much for having the film and inviting me for this conversation.
Thank you, Cristina.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Wow.